Hi, everyone. Sorry, used the wrong one. Welcome, everyone, to our series. Today, we're going to be talking about herbs for blood, all right, for blood sugar and inflammation. Jess and Sanaz is right here with me again. Thank you again for joining us. And I'm going to hand it over to her so she can start her presentation.
Thank you, Chef Jess. We got such a fun presentation for you guys. I almost want to just rush through mine just so we could start watching Chef Jess make a chamomile pound cake. That would go great with my chamomile tea. I'm Sanaz. I do herbal medicine and integrative medicine here at UCI, and feel free to post questions on the chat. Hopefully somebody will look at them, either me or Camber, or somebody will get to them. And just sit back and enjoy, and let's get going. So today we're going to talk about herbs for blood sugar and inflammation. I think it's important to know that they're both intertwined, right? So anything that causes a rise in our blood sugar, a rapid and steep climb in insulin and insulin growth factors, is the driving force of inflammation in our body. And so things like highly processed carbs, right? Like Pop-Tarts or white bagels or spaghetti, mac and cheese, French fries, soda pop, and of course candy and cookies and crackers. All of this drives blood sugar, which then drives inflammation. And one of the things that's happened in our culture, one of the biggest mistakes, is we demonized fat at one point. And by demonizing fat, what happened is we substituted with added sugar in a lot of foods to help things taste good. And that has drastically increased a lot of chronic illnesses linked to sugar, like cancer and diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, metabolic syndrome, gum problems, osteoporosis, depression. All of this are linked to inflammation and spikes in our blood sugar. And the amount of blood sugar that we are exposed to today is so much more, has increased dramatically in the last 70 years. So our grandparents probably weren't exposed to as much sugar as we eat in a day. So we'll talk about herbs. I also just want to mention, before we get into some fun herbs, there's also really important supplements that help, like magnesium. Also helps in helping and driving down sugar. And it helps kind of decrease, and it helps the sensitivity of insulin receptors. And vitamin D also plays a critical role in inflammation and blood sugar. So there's a bigger picture, but today we're going to focus on herbs. There we go, sugar and inflammation. So a couple of the stuff that we're not going to talk about are like turmeric and ginger and all of that, but those are also really important. I just wanted to talk about maybe ones that are less popular, but those are things that in our diet have also been linked to helping kind of decrease the multiple inflammatory pathways that exist. So this little guy do you think he's eating something really sweet and tasty, or perhaps something a little bit on the bitter side, right? And how many of us, honestly, consume bitter food? I don't know. I mean, I think the most common staple of bitter food in our culture is coffee, right? Just like the most common source of turmeric is mustard. So we're going to fix that today, okay? But bitters have been associated with not only helping with digestion and gastrointestinal issues like IBS and heartburn and cramping and indigestion, but it also helps with reducing blood sugar of foods, and it also helps reduce inflammation. So our bodies have kind of gotten lazy, right? So bitters, when they took babies in utero and they injected bitters, the babies actually stopped swallowing. They're like, not having this, right? But when they inject them with sugar, they were like lip smacking, gulping. So obviously we're prone to liking more sweet stuff than bitter stuff. And there's a genetic difference. Some people can tolerate bitters more than others, but it's a key important part of digestion that we've just kind of skipped over. In Germany and Austria, they have these liqueurs, Angostura bitters. You know, when we go there, Chef Jess, we'll have to try some one day. And it's tradition to have a shot of it right before you eat a meal. And what they're doing is they're ingesting bitter herbs and alcohol to help with digestion, to help reduce inflammation, to help their blood glucose. It's also been shown to help with appetite by kind of working on the hormones that make you feel full. It releases the gastric juices, so the gallbladder, the pancreas, the stomach. All of these organs have kind of become lazy in Western countries because they're just not, there's no need to work, right? And if there's no need to work, they're just going to kind of, you know, dust and rust and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lack of bitters in our food, understandably, because it doesn't taste very good. But it, you know, from helping you the first minute it hits your mouth, it helps increase saliva. And that's the first part of breaking down your food. So it's important to, especially with people that might have GI issues, having a bitter before a meal helps your organs kind of work. It's kind of your body's natural digestive enzyme. So I have patients that are like, oh, I went out and got a digestive enzyme and it worked great. And I'm like, cool. Why don't we first try to have your body do the work, you know, and see if we can have some bitters in our diet to help wake up all those organs kind of snoozing, you know, get them back to work. So yeah, I think that's, yeah. So one of the bitters I'd like to talk about that I think Chef Jess is actually making a bitter with this, which is so exciting, is dandelion. So there's all different kinds of bitters. There's herbs that we're going to talk about, chamomile, that's also a bitter, but it's more of a calming and nerving one, right? There's bitters that are antimicrobial, like golden seal or Oregon grapefruit. There's bitters that are anti-inflammatory, like devil's claw. And then there's herbs that are bitters like dandelion that also help reduce inflammation and also help protect the liver. And dandelion is an excellent affordable bitter, and you can use, you know, the root or the leaf, both can be used, and it's actually inhibits the two inflammatory pathways, NF-kappa B and COX-2, which a lot of NSAIDs target. And it's a prokinetic, which means it helps as we age, our stomachs kind of don't move as well. The peristalsis kind of slows down. So dandelion helps that be maintained, preventing constipation and food from staying and getting bloated and all that kind of stuff. It also helps with nausea, and it's also a prebiotic. It has a lot of inulin in it. So some people put ground dandelion root in with their coffees, and it helps protect our liver, kind of like milk thistle does. It's a hepatoprotectant. So people who drink or are on statins or, you know, have a lot of liver problems, and we see a lot of fatty liver disease now in kids because of high fructose corn sugar and the amount of sugar that kids are eating, not because of alcohol, but because of the diet and the sugar. So this helps protect the liver, and it's a natural bitter, helping with inflammation and blood glucose. So a couple bitters that you can just buy, but I strongly suggest following Chef Jeff's recipe coming up. But iberogast on the left, one of the main ingredients in that is chamomile, which we'll talk about. It's actually been clinically studied for IBS with constipation. Take it 2 to 3 times a day. It works really, it's shown to be effective with IBS symptoms. And then on the right, Galaxier from Germany. It is a non-alcoholic bitter, and one of the main ingredients is dandelion leaf, which we talked about. But we're going to make our own. So, so these are just 2 that you can get kind of over the counter that have been shown to help with blood glucose, stomach issues, and reducing inflammation. So this, of course, is also a bitter, is cinnamon, right? So cinnamon, there's 2 different types of cinnamon. There's Ceylon or Verum from Sri Lanka. That's kind of the real true cinnamon. But cinnamon has been shown to do a lot of things. It helps kind of inhibit the growth of yeast. It helps with bacteria. It helps with nausea. It also helps with digestion and gas and bloating, and it helps reduce the postprandial sugar. So if you eat, your blood sugar usually goes up And if you have some cinnamon, it helps reduce that spike in the blood sugar. We're trying to prevent those spikes in our blood sugar. So it's used for arthritis and joint pain. I use it a lot in menstrual pain. It helps with that too. Regulates blood sugar, regulates cholesterol. And, you know, all of these things are related, right? In integrative medicine, Chef Jess and I look at things as maybe doing one thing, but oh my gosh, you get all these other positive effects. Because guess what? They're all kind of related. We have all our organs actually talk to each other. You know, we don't treat them separately. So as it's reducing the blood sugar, it's reducing inflammation, which helps lower cholesterol, which also helps the fungus not grow and helps relieve some of our GI problems. Like, how cool is that, you know? So cinnamon, there's one meta-analysis found that cinnamon lowered fasting blood glucose by about 3 to 5%, and compared similar comparison to kind of older generation diabetic medications. And 6 grams of cinnamon, about 2 teaspoons, helps reduce the glycemic response of our body to food by 46%. So what I do is I like to incorporate all this stuff in our food, right? So it's just less stuff for us to think about. I personally grind my coffee in the morning, a bitter, and I grind some cinnamon with it, another bitter, and it helps reduce blood glucose to help reduce inflammation. So there, I get like 2 things in that you know, work together to kind of help decrease blood sugar. Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to say about cinnamon? I think that's it. Oh, here's a little recipe that has, I have to put turmeric in there when we're doing inflammation. It was like restraining myself with great effort to not talk about turmeric because I just think it's, I think I could talk about it for days. So maybe we just do one presentation on that, Chef Jess, and just, we use turmeric for skincare. We use turmeric like ingesting. We'll just, you know, every way we can get turmeric. And I even use turmeric. I make turmeric suppositories for patients. So we can stick it in any way we can, but maybe that's a whole different topic, Camber. Maybe we'll put that on the future date if people are interested. But here's turmeric mixed with cinnamon, 2 potent anti-inflammatories. And yes, there's a couple dates in it for natural sugar, some pepper to help the turmeric get absorbed systemically, and some milk, whether dairy or non-dairy. It's so good. It's so good for the winter. It just is nourishing and just kind of grabs onto your bones, if you know what I mean. My favorite herb. I think, you know, I don't know if you guys ever think about these things, but I always think like if I were to come back, you know, in a shape of an herb, what herb would I want to be? Chef Jess, maybe you thought about this with food. Like if you could come back as one food, like what would you come back as? But I would pick chamomile. I would want to come back as the herb of chamomile. I think there are so many benefits to chamomile that you can't just, you just benefit in many ways. There's over 1 million cups of chamomile tea that are consumed every single day. It is all over the world, all different cultures, and the benefits that it's been clinically studied. Let me pull up the next slide. So topically, you can use, and Germany uses this, but topically chamomile creams have been shown to be just as effective as low-dose hydrocortisone cream. And then it helps with menstrual cramps. It's an antispasmodic, so it helps reduce spasms in the gut with IBS symptoms as well. And it helps, it's safe in babies with colic and anxiety. So a randomized placebo-controlled study at the University of Pennsylvania Medical School found German chamomile was effective for relieving anxiety and easing the symptoms of mild depression. Colic is also was studied in Germany, used for infant colic. So there's no wonder that in The Tale of a Peter Rabbit, you know, by Beatrice Potters, that the mom gave that, you know, that Peter some chamomile right after he went over across in the garden of Farmer McGregor. So it has a lot of history behind it. Digestive issues, it's a potent anti-inflammatory. Like I said, it helps with the spasm of IBS symptoms. It helps with indigestion, it helps with diarrhea, it helps with gas, it helps with menstrual cramps. And topically, there's a cream called Camel Care Soothing Cream that comes from Germany, and it's very effective at any kind of atopic dermatitis, any kind of skin issues, potent anti-inflammatory. So kind of like turmeric, like if anywhere we can put chamomile, whether topical, whether oral, whether whatever, you can do the teas. You can do the extract, Nature's Way. Purple Top also has a good extract. But I just love the teas because I feel like there's so much healing that goes on from the minute it hits your mouth, and the taste buds get activated from the minute it goes down your throat. I mean, why not just get all the benefits of that versus just swallowing the pill? What else do I want to say about chamomile? Here's a little recipe for you guys for German chamomile flowers. Really easy, 1 to 2 cups. You can even put some cinnamon in there and maybe pick some weeds of dandelion and put that in there. And just make it every day, make it for a couple days, put it in the refrigerator, safe for kids, safe for adults. And you're getting an anti-anxiety effect. You're getting, helps with blood sugar because it's a mild bitter, and it's just helping with inflammation in the gut and spasms. And so it helps your mind and your gut at the same time. So I'm excited because Chef Jess is making a pound cake with chamomile. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Chef, and so we can get, into these herbs and get a little bit dirty and see how it turns out. Are you there, Chef Jess?
I am. I am here.
Okay, good.
You're like, am I there? I am. I am right here. So let me turn on my camera. If you can stop sharing, I will start.
Well, that's a fantastic idea. Let's figure this out now. Stop sharing.
I think you did.
Did I do it?
I think so.
Okay, cool. Stop share. Here's a button that says stop share. There we go. I think I really did it now because I see you.
All right, let's get started. So we're going to be making 3 things today. And the last one is kind of like a bonus, I guess, because I am going to show you how to make homemade bitters. And so if you want to try to make bitters at home, you can try and do it. But we're going to start off by working with cinnamon. So I love this talk because I think one of the things that I often talk about, if you haven't heard me, is that we don't have enough bitter foods in our diet, and that we're doing a disservice to ourselves by not eating more bitter foods, because if we did, we would eat less salty and sweet things. And so one of the funniest things that you can look at are oranges. If you look at the orange peel, there's the pith, right? The white of the orange. That protects the orange. As humans, though, we want the sweet stuff in the middle. We don't want that white stuff. And so over the years, evolution, the orange has actually lost a lot of its pith. The pith, which is what is bitter and which protects the fruit. And so I always say when you eat the orange, try to eat a lot of that white stuff, just because it helps you learn how to eat more bitter foods. But we'll also show you how to make some bitters. But first, we're going to make a fun dish with cinnamon. I find that I always do cinnamon sweet. So I was like, why don't we do something fun today and do cinnamon salty? And I'm going to do a play on a Vietnamese dish. So it's a Vietnamese beef stew. And usually it's made with tomato paste, some carrots, ginger, onion, garlic, and these are the aromatics that make it taste amazing. Cinnamon, anise, and a couple of bay leaves. And you can even add more cinnamon if you want, so it's up to you. I also have an arrangement of carrots, and so you can use whatever carrots you have lying around, but I like using the colorful ones. And then we've got 1 onion, some ginger, and garlic, okay? So like I said, traditionally it is done with beef, but we're gonna be using chicken today, and I'm using bone-in skin on chicken thighs. If you're worried about fat, one of the things that I like to do is I'll just show you then how I do it. I'm gonna remove 1 skin off the thigh, and I'm gonna use that as my fat. Now I'm gonna remove all the other ones, all the other skins, and I'm not gonna use it, and that just reduces the amount of fat that we're gonna have in this dish. A lot of people give chicken thighs a bad rap because of the extra fat, but you can take it off, like you can take off the skin. So I'm just using 1 piece of skin to kind of give me that flavor. This isn't in your instructions, but it's just something you can do if you want. And I am using a cast iron. So that's going to start and it's going to bubble up in a little bit.
I'm going to answer a couple questions,
Go
Chef
for
Jess.
it.
So someone's asking if garlic is considered a bitter. Chef Jess, do
Ooh.
you answer that one?
I don't think it is. Would it? I don't think so. It's pretty sweet in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely got a strong taste, but I don't think it gives you that, it's more of a spicy kick to it, I would think, than a bitter. Someone mentioned bitter melon, which absolutely is used a lot in Asia and South America and is a natural remedy for diabetes. So that's also one. And chamomile topically for bug bites, I think it is anti-inflammatory, so it helps a little bit. You can mix it with some arnica and lavender essential oil and clay. That would give an extra benefit for bug bites too.
Okay, so now let's get some chopping done. I realize sometimes I show you some chopping, sometimes I don't, so let's do some chopping today. So, easy ones first, carrots. All we have to do, claw, and we're just gonna slice. And yes, I am using the peel because the peel is where all those nutrients that you paid for are if you're buying organic produce. So I am gonna use it all. And you just want them to be bite-sized pieces. You can even use like daikon radish in this. You can use a whole bunch of different root vegetables in here. Onion, we're just gonna dice our onion, so I'm gonna cut it right in half, then peel.
There's one question about bitters, and they're asking what we mean by bitters. And I just want to say it's food, herbs, anything that tastes bitter in your mouth. And there's a question about healthy sodas like Olipop and Poppy. I don't know about you, Chef Jess, but anything with sugar or even sugar alternatives, I do not like. And bitters after a meal, I think you still get some benefit, but ideally before a meal, so you can get all those organs kind of working. So when the food hits the stomach, it helps digest it all.
I agree. I think that a lot of those sodas and things like that, I feel like you just fall into another trap of just having more sodas. And so instead, water is a great friend of yours, and then you can add a couple chamomile flowers in there, and then you're good to go. Hibiscus is another one. There's so many great teas out there. I feel like we don't need that bubbly stuff. And if you do need carbonation, just sparkling water. The Olipops and things like that, I mean, they were obviously a prepackaged product. And so I don't know if the research is there behind it yet.
Yeah, I agree with you too, Chef Jess.
Yeah. All right, so ginger and garlic. There is nothing wrong with the peel, okay? So everybody that feels like peeling it, you can, but why? There's no reason. And if you wanted to, you can use a spoon and it'll peel it for you. We're not going to peel it. The skin is perfectly fine. And then I'm gonna take a clove of garlic too, 3.
I always overdo my garlic, Chef Jess.
I do too, yeah. I say 3 and then I'll use 6. And so I feel like I use a whole head of garlic.
Yeah, that's one of the things I multiply by whatever I feel like.
Exactly. Like how much can you add?
Yeah, without my kids like noticing drastically. That's the main thing. There's a question about drinking chamomile or dandelion tea and if they have the same effect. That they have different effects. They're both good in their own way, but why not mix both of them and get both effects? And cinnamon for menstrual pain. During menstruation, you take it and it helps with the cramping. You don't have to take it every single day. When taking these herbs, how much should be taken per day, such as cinnamon, turmeric, or dandelion? I think when you consume it in food, then you're safe. If you have a cup of dandelion tea, if you add cinnamon to your food, if you add turmeric to your food, then we don't need to worry so much about those things. So food is medicine is good. Is there a brand of chamomile topical cream you recommend? The Camel Care Soothing Cream is good, or any cream from online. You can look other ones too.
All right, so the skin I just took out, nice and crispy. You could probably eat that if you wanted to, but I'm gonna just put my chicken in here now and sear it off. Now, traditionally, you can serve this with rice, or you can serve it with bread, like whole wheat bread, like a crusty baguette would be great.
Yum.
But bone equals flavor. So a lot of people don't like cooking chicken with bone in. What I think it's important to remember is that there's two things in meat that make things taste good: fat and bones. So when you buy things like beef, for example, you're buying for fat. Like, that's really what you're paying for. That's the stuff that costs more money. And so it's called marbling to make it sound better, but those are the things that make your food have flavor. The bone is gonna impart flavor too. So I'm just searing this off, just a little bit brown, doesn't need to be completely cooked through, because we're just gonna use the same pot to make everything else.
Chef Jess, is there a good way to clean vegetables if they're buying them non-organic?
Buying the vegetables pre-chopped?
Someone's asking how they clean vegetables so they can use the skin too if it's not organic.
Oh, so hold on, I will look at hold on. I will look at the question too. Let's see, because I couldn't hear what you just said.
It says if there is a good way to clean vegetables so can use the skin too if we buy not organic.
Baking soda. Baking soda or a little bit of vinegar. Either one will work. You can soak your vegetables in like a baking soda with water, or you can use a little bit of vinegar too, like apple cider vinegar, and just soak it in there. I'd say maybe a teaspoon for like a gallon of water would be perfectly fine. But that also helps remove some of that wax that's on the outside of it, if you're worried about that waxy stuff. And cool little tip, if anybody didn't know. You know those stickers, and they get really annoying and they're stuck on there and you just can't get them off? Just to let you know, it's okay to consume them. They're food grade. And so I learned that recently. I was like, oh, it's okay if you get a little sticker in your food. All right, so now I'm gonna add my onions, carrots, and aromatics. My aromatics are my onions and garlic, by the way.
So I like this person, Chef Jess. She asked if dark chocolate counts. Absolutely, it counts.
Cacao nibs was like one of the ones that I was reading about too.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone, the one most important ingredient I forgot to bring out because it's in our garden right now. We have fresh lemongrass. I'm gonna see if one of my students, Jewel, or can you go run and grab a lemongrass? The big tall one that's growing. We have so much lemongrass I didn't buy it, and now we are missing it. So lemongrass goes in here to give it that really nice kind of lemony, lemon flavor taste. But I think this is the part that I need to explain the most. When we talk about food, we often talk about umami, or we want things to be umami flavored. And we'll say, okay, the Japanese or Chinese food, we use MSG a lot of the time. Well, in Italian food and a lot of Western food, tomato paste is your best friend. It creates a level of flavor, like a layer of flavor that you can't get from much else. And so a lot of tricks or a lot of things that you can do to make your food taste better is actually by just adding a little bit of tomato paste. And so I'm gonna grab a spoon. We're gonna do about a 1/4 cup of tomato paste.
questions about the type of cinnamon. Cinnamon verum or CEYLON, Ceylon cinnamon, are preferred over cassia, and you can get powdered, usually has a shorter shelf life than if you get the stick, so that's just up to you. And a few drops of bitters does go a long way, so just see what works best for you. If you want to take the whole tincture, a spoonful, usually it's a teaspoon or a tablespoon anyway, so you know, a little bit still helps.
Oops. It just came up at my face. Oops. Whoa. Yay.
Got your ingredients.
I'll show you the beautiful lemongrass that we have. So this is, if you ever come to our garden, we have like the most amazing lemongrass. This is how long it grows. It's probably one of the easiest things to grow. You will have a lemongrass bush that you have no idea what to do with. And the great thing about having fresh lemongrass is you can use more of it than what the stuff you buy. Because the stuff you buy in the store, you can usually only use this portion of. The fresh stuff, you can go ahead and use all of it. So I'm gonna use all of it, except for this top part because it's too long. But all you have to do is break it up to give it flavor. Now, if you're living in Asia, where there's an Asian market nearby, you can buy lemongrass frozen, and you can put it in a tea bag, and you can use that.
Oh, I love that.
To make it easier. All right, so that all goes in. Now I'm gonna add my chicken back inside, and I'm gonna add my seasoning. So the seasoning that we're gonna add is, yes, we are gonna add some fish sauce. I'm gonna add a little bit of fish sauce. Add a little bit of low sodium tamari. You'll have the proportions too. And then this is the fun thing. We're gonna add date syrup. And so date syrup is one of those substitutes for sugar, but it's still sugar. It's not anything less, it's not healthier. It is healthier in the sense that it's not a processed white granulated sugar, but it's still sugar. So it still has that, it can raise your blood sugar level and things like that. So you still wanna be careful with it and use it sparingly, but it is there as a good alternative to regular sugar.
Jess, we have two questions about tomato paste. One person is asking if it makes it inflammatory because it's a nightshade.
Do you wanna touch on the nightshade? The nightshade talk. When people ask us about nightshades these days, I don't think the research is there to prove that nightshades are bad for you. I always look at the Italian diet, and I was like, the Italians have survived this long eating eggplants and tomatoes for this long. So it's interesting to think that nightshades might affect you. Now, I'm not saying they might not, but I would work with your doctor. It might be specifically one vegetable in the nightshade family, or it might be specifically something inside the tomato. So you would have to work with your doctor. What do you say, Sanaz?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And listen to your body. Like, you know, just because it's a nightshade shouldn't, you know, you might not have any problems with it. So let's not eliminate foods. Just, you know, unless we know that maybe we specifically are sensitive to it. The other question is if there's a substitute for tomato paste, if someone can't tolerate tomatoes.
Ooh, yeah, don't add tomato paste. And as a thickener at the end, just add cornstarch and water or arrowroot and water. Because what the tomato paste is gonna do also is kind of thicken everything up for us right now. So I'm gonna let that stew now, and then we're gonna go on to our cake. So our pound cake. Yes, I understand. Pound cake isn't exactly low sugar, low glycemic, and all those good things, but it can be kind of, and I'm gonna show you how. So I'm gonna add my cinnamon, star anise, and bay leaves in there as well. Let's bake. I feel like I don't get to bake a lot in here, so we're gonna do some baking today. So right here, is the most important part. When you make pound cake, you know how the name pound cake came to be, maybe. It's a pound of sugar, a pound of butter, and a pound of something else. I can't remember what the last thing is, but that's how a pound cake. And so it's a pound of sugar and a pound of butter. We're not doing that.
Thank God.
I know, but I do need to figure out, I had to figure out how do I get the chamomile flavor to go through? Because when you're making a pound cake, you could literally infuse any flavor into that butter. So I did something similar. I'm using butter, but not a lot. We're going to use a little bit of Greek yogurt too. But I have honey and butter melted. And what that is doing is it's steeping the chamomile leaves that I have there. So I have a little bit of chamomile in there and it's steeping. Sorry about the sound, everyone. And so it's steeping in there and it's getting all those great flavors. Now I'm going to grab a strainer. I'm going to push it through. And I'm going to really, really squeeze out all those chamomile juices. So I'm just going to go in there and really give it a good squeeze. And I am going to use fresh chamomile leaves too. I'll show you how I'm going to, oh, not fresh, but I am going to use chamomile leaves in the actual batter. But I wanted to show you this part. So I'm infusing it and then I'm going to squeeze out as much from those leaves as possible because that's all flavor. The great thing about butter, and that's why you can't give butter a bad rap, is it's very good at extracting flavors and it's good at holding and spreading the flavors. And so you need oils when you bake sometimes because it helps spread the flavor throughout the dish. All right, so there's that. And now I'm going to show you how to take care of your chamomile. So I have a coffee grinder here. Coffee grinder is your best friend if you're going to start doing things like this, like making your own spice mixes and things like that. I cleaned it with just a handful of white rice. I have chamomile flowers here, and I'm just going to put it in there, and I'm going to give it a good grind.
Chef Jess, quick question, lemongrass leaves instead of the stalks, can you use that?
You can, just use more and break it apart, kind of bruise it so you get all the flavors out of it. You will just need to use more. Okay, so it's this fine powder now, and you might have a few big pieces, but there's nothing wrong with that. That's ready to go. So let's make our batter. White whole wheat flour. So this is not, if you can't see, it's not white, but it's white whole wheat, which is a flour that grows very, very, it's not as brown as whole wheat flour. And so it tricks us into thinking that it's white. And it's a little finer, so it's easier to eat. It's kind of smoother than whole wheat flour is. Baking powder, almond meal, more fiber. Okay, so not all just white, not just all regular flour. And we're gonna mix that up. And in this, I'm gonna add my chamomile, my ground up chamomile. There we go. So that's our dry. Now let's get our wet going. Brown sugar, and you can use date sugar if you want. 3 eggs. And yes, I have different colored eggs because we go through so many eggs in here.
What are your thoughts, Chef Jess, of monk fruit or stevia or agave instead of sugar?
I am not a big fan of anything that uses erythritol as a carrier right now. So if you look at all of those things, they're good, but they're very, very, very strong. So a drop of stevia could taste like 3 or 4 tablespoons of sugar. So they needed a carrier. They needed something to spread that flavor. And erythritol was the one that they were using. But there's been some research that's negative about erythritol. So monk fruit stevia, if you're buying it in the form of just drops, that's fine. The problem I find is that it's very hard to control in the sense that you can't just use a little. So you're still training your taste buds to need that taste of excessive sugar. So you have to play around with it. I'm a big fan of dates and date sugar right now, just because it's just dates. It's not really anything else. But if you are also, you probably have heard me talk about it. Allulose is another one that's fun to play with if you are into sugar-free baking. And then some vanilla. And then yogurt. So a lot of people, so one of the things that's I think interesting about baking is that when you're looking at a recipe, sugar is not considered a dry ingredient most of the time. It is considered a wet ingredient. So if you ever see sugar in a recipe, make sure to mix it with your dry. That
I have a question about green tea versus chamomile tea. And they're asking which one they should drink before or after a meal. I think you should drink both because I love green tea. Just not at once, maybe. So I can't pick. Don't make me choose. It's like choosing which parent you love more. It's got to be both. So I'm sorry, but and yeah, grapefruit, I believe, is a bitter.
Yes. The oranges that they grow in the UK on the trees or whatever that they use for marmalade. Yes. What they use to make marmalade. If you've ever had marmalade, like marmalade in a jar, they have the peel on it. And it's very, very bitter. And I believe that you can only use a certain orange, and it's a very, very bitter orange. And they add a lot of sugar to it, but that orange is special because it is so bitter, and they use the peel. All right, so I'm mixing this up, and I don't want to over mix it. So I'm just going to go in and fold. Because if I overdo this, it's going to be very tough. So now that's done. I'm going to pour it into a loaf pan and bake it for about 40 to 50 minutes. And then when you're done, oops, the magic of TV. Nice. So there's a loaf ready to go. And then we're going to make a little glaze for it. So I have chamomile steeping in a little bit of water over here. Oh, oops. I'm sorry. I was wondering why that batter looked so wet or so dry. I forgot to add the most important part. The honey and the butter. So add that into your wet ingredients.
Someone commented that the bitter orange in English marmalade comes from Seville, Spain. Yeah.
Yes, that's what it is. I watch Paddington Bear too much with my kids. I loved that. It's my favorite scene. All right. So now I've got the chamomile ready, and I'm going to just pour it over some powdered sugar. And this is definitely a part that if you're trying to watch your sugar content and things like that, completely not necessary. It does make it just a little bit sweeter and brings out the chamomile flavor a little bit more, but definitely not necessary. And you don't need to use all of it. But then you've got this chamomile glaze that you can pour right over your cake. So then I'll just drizzle just a little bit. Okay. And you're ready to go. So before I let you go, give me a couple more minutes of your time, because I'm going to show you how to make a bitter or make your own bitters. don't buy cheap vodka. Like we don't usually have hard liquor or anything like that inside this building. And so I don't want Instacart to charge me for buying whatever. So I had to stop and buy, and I must have stood there for the longest time looking at vodkas and just thinking like, I have not bought vodka in a long time to buy. What you want, okay, so the great thing about making bitters is, yes, it doesn't have to be made with vodka or alcohol. You can use vinegar. The problem is when you use another ingredient like vinegar, it takes away a little bit of that bitterness. As my dad always said, vodka should not taste like anything. So the whole idea is that the vodka is just the carrier. It's helping you extract the flavors out of these herbs. So you want something sweet, or you want some kind of like flavor, right? So I've got some cinnamon sticks broken up. I thought it would be fun to do cardamom. The recipe you'll get has different things you can add. You can add star anise, you can add cloves, lavender, and really anything. But you really want to break the cardamom up. So you kind of just go in and break up the seeds. For those who didn't know, Sanaz and I had a fun time with this once. When you buy cardamom, the reason why ground cardamom costs so much money is because somebody needs to go through each of these pods and actually take out the little seeds that are inside. So it takes a long time. It's a lot of work, but there's actually little seeds inside that they grind up. And that's what cardamom is when you're buying pre-ground cardamom. We're just going to add that in. I have some dandelion root. Now, this dandelion root came in a tea bag. So you can buy it in different forms. I have orange and lemon peel. Okay. And I can't say this, gentian, or so you'll get a list of different types of bitter herbs that you can add to. And I'm gonna mix that up. Now I'm just gonna grab my vodka and I'm gonna pour enough so that it can cover and a little bit more. Okay, so just like that. Now, ideally, 2 weeks, okay? You can probably start tasting it in about 3 days, but it's going to get better over time. So 2 to 3 weeks is what I would suggest. But then after those 2 to 3 weeks, you need to strain it. And when you strain it, you want to use what they call nut bags or like cheesecloth. And you really want to squeeze out as much of that liquid or as much of those herbs and spices as you can. The other thing you need to remember is every day, if you're putting this, so put this in a dark place, go in and shake it every once in a while, because you want to break up all those little pieces of the herbs and the spices to really get that flavor and those bitters going. So we're going to let this sit for about 2 to 3 weeks, ideally, but again, 3 days, you can start tasting it, and then put it into a little dropper jar, like a little dropper jar, and then you can just do however many little drops you need before your meal. And that's it.
Okay, I have a question for you. Is kombucha considered a bitter?
Ooh. I wouldn't say so, because kombucha is a SCOBY that eats sugar.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of sugar. Natural.
It does.
Yeah, so I would.
No. It would be bitter because you added some bitter flavor to it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. And that looks great. I used to make a children's bitter without the alcohol and like glycerin. So that is also an option for if anybody's trying to kind of avoid the alcohol. The alcohol works great. Oh, we got a bunch of questions all this time. Can we use tequila instead of vodka?
You can use rum too. You can use 151. Yeah, you can use different things. You can definitely use that.
I think this is the same person that's asking about the chocolate. You know, I like it.
Yes. Cacao nibs. Cacao nibs are great too for this.
Yeah. And someone's saying if cacao powder is considered also the same, I would say yes. What do you think?
Probably.
Yeah.
This is a question that I don't know the answer to, and Sanaz, you probably do, about heating honey,
Oh,
if
yeah.
you can and not.
I do it very, very low and just right at the end.
Yeah.
Very, very minimally. So yeah, very much, I don't, overheat at all, just very low heat and just barely enough, just the minimum required.
And if you're worried about that for the recipe, go ahead and use something like date syrup, agave, even brown rice syrup would work.
Yeah, I think that's great. Any other questions? I don't see any
If
here.
not, that's the stew. I wish everyone could come down and smell the beautiful, beautiful stew. You can do this in the Instant Pot too. So if you're an Instant Pot user, go for it. Use your Instant Pot. But what you want to do is cook this until it gets really soft and tender and reduces about half. So we're going to let that sit and cook for a little bit longer.
Okay, and where would they buy date sugar, Chef Jess?
Sprouts.
Okay.
And we will send the recipes right after this. I think that's what Camber is going to type.
You're telepathic too, Chef Jess. Okay.
And so for those who don't know, we have community classes starting back up here in the Musallam Nutritional Education Center. So if you're interested in any kind of cooking, let us know. We're here to help you, and we hope to see you again next month.
Thank you. Thank you, Chef Jess, for making all these wonderful recipes. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Oh, wait.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Is palm sugar good? No, palm sugar is not good. Oh, yeah. Every day to make it with fresh dandelion leaves? Ooh, that one I don't know.
You can, as long as you don't have any gallbladder issues, you can drink a cup a day. And raw honey, I like raw honey. I'm okay with it. I don't know if you have any other thoughts, Chef Jess.
No, I'm okay with it too, as long as it's not babies, right?
Okay, thank you, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.